Hi, my name is Penny and I am a competitive, nationally ranked debater. Today, let's talk about abortion, more specifically, debating abortion from a pro-choice perspective. Most debates about abortion that you see online and just in general are discussions about whether or not abortion is a moral good or a moral bad. And quite frankly, I really just don't think you're going to be changing the minds of anybody because morality debates are just insanely subjective, right? And it's difficult to get anywhere, especially if another person's morality is grounded entirely on religious convictions. I think then that the most fruitful and effective form of debate is to engage in the discussion about the role of government in abortions instead. There are plenty of morally reprehensible actions that governments don't protect against. For example, it's perfectly legal to cheat on your spouse, to lie, to be mean, to be rude to others. And these are all things that nobody in their right mind would ever say that they think should be illegal or criminalized. That's because when governments choose to make something illegal or to criminalize certain behavior, there are certain barriers or parameters that governments must establish first. Firstly, governments are expected to protect our private property. This includes our houses and our homes and our objects, but it also includes our bodies, our health, our time. It's this reason that the government protects private property that slavery is illegal. Governments are also expected to apply the law equally. There are others like that governments should try to preserve public order and safety, but for the sake of our argument today, we're only going to be talking about those two primary goals that I mentioned earlier. The first, to protect private property, and the second, to apply the law equally. Like I said earlier, our bodies are defined as a form of private property. What that means is that the government has no substantial claim to force you to let another person use your body. And since pregnancy not only involves the use of a person's body, but significant impacts physically and emotionally, banning of abortion means enshrining involuntary use of organs into legal law. Think about how the government can't force you to donate blood or to donate organs, even if you commit a violent crime. No one is legally required to give bodily support to others, even if it saves a life. Furthermore, applying this only to women is unequal distribution of the law, because it disenfranchises a woman's right to bodily autonomy, while a man's right to bodily autonomy is fully intact. And so we see that the banning of abortion is morally unsound on two separate levels. First of all, it violates the fact that governments aren't supposed to interfere with private property, and second, it's unequal distribution of the law. What this argument does is it shifts the burden of government action onto the pro-life person. So generally in pro-life, pro-choice debates, it's on the burden of the pro-choice person to prove why women should have the right to kill their own babies. But when you present the argument in this fashion, you put the burden on them to prove why the government has the moral right to step in when they generally don't. The primary argument you'll receive in response to this is that when women consent to sex, they consent to the possibility of pregnancy. And I'll share with you a common response that I like to use. So when you drive a car, you understand as you drive that you carry with you the possibility of getting into an accident. But being hit or even hitting another person doesn't mean that you've consented to die or to be denied medical care. Even if we take this example to the extreme, and let's say you purposely hit a pedestrian, and by some miracle, you and that pedestrian are the same blood type and are the same match, and that person needs a liver or something, the government still won't force you to go and donate your liver to the other person, despite your actions being the reason as to why they need this new organ in the first place. Even if pregnancy is a known risk, people retain the right to mitigate those consequences, especially when those consequences rely on the usage of their own bodies. It's for this exact same reason that governments don't force violent criminals to donate blood or to donate other parts of their own bodies. The other argument that you'll hear is that parental obligation makes abortion inherently different, and I'll show you my argument here for this as well. I like to argue here that parental obligation is something that parents actively consent to. For example, mothers can give up their children for adoption and waive their parental obligations altogether, and this isn't seen as murder. Same thing for fathers. Fathers step away from children all the time, and nobody declares this as murder either. This is because people who don't want to be parents, who have parenthood shoved down their throats, are, first of all, they refuse self-fulfillment in their own lives, right? But they also just generally make for bad parents. The other argument I like to present is that parental obligations, like to provide food and shelter, never require parents to use their own bodies. No government forces parents to breastfeed or to donate blood or to donate kidneys, even if it's to save the life of their own child. And nobody in their right mind would ever call refusing to donate murder. Additionally, responsibility for consciousness doesn't create obligation, and we know this because sperm donors and egg donors aren't expected to parent the offspring that emerge from that. The abortion issue is one that really shows us how the bodies of women are rarely seen to be our own, and you can scream "my body, my choice" at the top of your lungs all you want, but you're not going to be changing anybody's mind until you're able to break down part by part why it legitimately should supersede death. That's all I have for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed, happy debating, and my DMs are open if you have any questions.